Good morning and welcome to World News here on TVP World. I'm your host, Diana Skaya. European energy ministers are meeting in Warsaw today for an informal summit to discuss regional issues. Key topics include preparations to support Ukraine's energy needs this winter, as well as broader discussions on energy security and the clean energy transition. Now, Sasha Farbach is on site and we go to him right now. Good morning, Sasha. So what can we expect?
Hi, good morning, Dana. So it's, as you said here, it's all about energy and it's all about Ukraine as well. Now, this is an informal gathering. So what that means is here with undersecretaries, secretaries of energy, but also we have here representatives from the UK as well, from the National Energy Agency here, from Ukraine, also that country's energy minister, all here to discuss, build dialogue, build consensus, because what matters is those formal gatherings, and that'll take place around the 10th or 12th of June in Brussels. But nevertheless, an important point here to discuss issues. As you said, it's Ukraine and Moldova at the top of the agenda, seeing also where they are in terms of that infrastructure process, that energy infrastructure process in that European integration. Now, arriving here as well, as the host, the Polish presidency here, with the energy minister from Poland opening that up, asking her also directly what key points are relevant here for Poland. Let's hear what she told us.
When it comes to nuclear power projects being developed near the shores of the Baltic, but also wind farms, a new agreement currently being signed by the Baltic countries lays out the scope of joint efforts in this area, including broader monitoring. Internal affairs and defense ministers of respective countries, alongside their security services, are also involved in the process. We're going to be working extensively on these issues.
Of course, we know that with hybrid attacks, that's also a key point here. Also here, the Commissioner for Energy and Housing, Mr. Jorgensen, also speaking to him. Also, very was clear from the arriving ministers is one clear message that no one wants any more Russian energy in future. That roadmap was set out last week that's going to be discussed here of phasing out any Russian gas, any Russian oil, to clamp down on the shadow fleet. And that was clear from all the ministers that were arriving here today. And a clear message that it's time for Russian energy to end now as well as in the future. That's the latest here. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you so much, Sasha Farbach. In the latest nightly address, Volodymyr Zelenskyy has said that he is ready for direct and substantive negotiations with Vladimir Putin in Turkey. Now, while the Kremlin is silent about whether Putin will attend the meeting, Zelenskyy reiterated that Ukraine always supports diplomacy and will be present in Ankara.
I am grateful to the President for his support. I confirmed to him Ukraine's readiness for direct and meaningful negotiations with Putin. Ukraine has always supported diplomacy. I am ready to be in Turkey. Unfortunately, the world has yet to receive a clear response from Russia regarding numerous ceasefire proposals. Russian attacks continue. Moscow remains silent all day on the proposal for a direct meeting. A very strange silence.
During a press conference ahead of Donald Trump's arrival to Turkey, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan highlighted the significance of the back-to-back negotiations over peace in Ukraine. The leader went on to say that a new window of opportunity has emerged to bring the war in Ukraine to an end.
Russia, Ukraine, the United States and European countries are in agreement on holding talks. As the only country that has earned the trust of all parties, we reiterated our readiness to contribute to these negotiations and our willingness to host them. With the latest contacts, we see that a new window of opportunity has opened. God willing, we believe this time the opportunity will not be wasted.
Staying on the matter, Donald Trump in a statement expressed hope for a positive outcome to that upcoming meeting between Russia and Ukraine in Turkey. Now let's listen into what he had to say about the situation.
I think you may have a good result out of the Thursday meeting in Turkey between Russia and Ukraine. And I believe the two leaders were going to be there. I was thinking about flying over. I don't know where I'm going to be on Thursday. I've got so many meetings. But I was thinking about actually flying over there. There's a possibility of it, I guess, if I think things can happen. But we got to get it done. We got to save 5,000 lives a week. 5,000 lives is really more than that. It's worse than that.
And Russia's attacks on Ukraine continue despite calls for a 30-day ceasefire from Ukraine and European allies, with Moscow targeting several regions with drones and guided bombs, marking a significant escalation after the May 12 deadline for an unconditional ceasefire expired.
In a series of Russian overnight strikes, Mykolaiv, Kirovohrad, Vinnytsia and Odessa were hit with drones, while the Sumy region in the northeast was targeted with guided bombs. The attacks followed a day of ongoing Russian assaults, and Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha reported multiple casualties, with 7 wounded in one drone strike. In response, the Kremlin rejected the ceasefire as an ultimatum, but invited Ukraine to sit down for direct talks in Istanbul later this week. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy has accepted the invitation, agreeing to meet Putin on May 15th, although the Russian leader's attendance remains uncertain. Meanwhile, European countries have pledged to implement new sanctions against Russia's banking and energy sectors if the ceasefire is not honored. And a new round of sanctions is expected to be unveiled on May 14th. US President Donald Trump, however, has shifted his stance, now urging Ukraine to engage in peace talks with Putin and even suggesting he may join the discussions in Istanbul.
A significant new ruling from the United Nations has found Russia responsible for the downing of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17, which tragically killed all 298 people on board in 2014. The UN's aviation agency, the International Civil Aviation Organization, has confirmed that Russia violated international air law by downing the passenger plane with a Russian-made missile over eastern Ukraine during the conflict between pro-Russian rebels and Ukrainian forces. Now, the flight en route from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur was struck over the Donbas region, killing passengers from several countries, including 196 Dutch nationals. The agency's ruling follows a 2022 case brought by the Australian and Dutch governments, both of whom have praised the decision. Moreover, this ruling builds on previous legal actions, including a Dutch court sentencing in absentia 3 individuals linked to the downing to life in prison. EU Defence Commissioner Andrius Kubilius says that a portion of the €800 billion Rearm Europe program will go towards supporting Ukraine's military. In an interview with the European Pravda, Kubilius went on to say that member states can use the program's funds to supply Ukraine with weapons and invest in its defense industry.
The Rearm Europe plan involves a projected €650 billion in increased defense spending and €150 billion in loans for defense investments. Kubilius said member states can take out loans within the €150 billion instrument and use them for joint procurement in the Ukrainian defense industry for the needs of the country's armed forces. The official also went on to comment on a possible Russian attack against the European Union, saying that intelligence services of multiple countries have reported that Russia could be ready to attack the bloc before 2030. According to Kubilius, Russia transitioned to a war economy, and if a ceasefire in Ukraine is reached, Moscow will continue to manufacture weapons that would allow it to start a new and broader war.
The European Union is preparing to use capital controls and tariffs against Russia in case Hungary vetoes the extension of the EU's economic sanctions against Moscow. The European Commission told member states' authorities that a major part of the sanctions could be moved onto a different legal basis to avoid Budapest blocking their adoption. Now, the move is a response to Viktor Orban's repeated threats that Hungary will veto the extension of economic restrictions on Russia set to expire with the end of July. Now, these, apart from frozen Russian assets worth some €200 billion, include import bans and price caps on the energy sector. The legal workaround would only require a majority of EU countries for the sanctions to be extended and not a unanimous vote. The move is being prepared after the EU vowed to maintain economic pressure on Russia as it attempts to force the country into agreeing to a proposed ceasefire in Ukraine. According to Rostislav Khotin from Radio Free Europe, Hungary has been blocking Ukraine's progress on joining the EU, and therefore the expectations are high in Kiev that Budapest's vetoes can be bypassed.
The expectation in Ukraine was that during the Polish presidency in the European Union, which will last until the end of June. Ukraine will open at least 1 or 2, maybe 3 clusters for EU accession out of 6 clusters altogether. But Hungary has been blocking this, and Ukrainians hoped that Polish presidency will help them to open these first clusters. And so far, these hopes did not materialize because of Hungary vetoes. And Hungary, Prime Minister Viktor Orban is constantly putting obstacles on Ukraine's EU integration. So the Hungarian problem is there, but the Brussels EU bureaucracy should think of a way how to avoid this Hungarian veto.
Polish truckers have blocked a border crossing with Ukraine, protesting what they believe to be unfair competition from the Ukrainian transport industry. Back in 2023, similar demonstrations at the border severely disrupted transport routes.
The organizers of the protest at the Yachodin-Dorohuts crossing have said that one vehicle was allowed to cross the border each way per hour, while humanitarian and military aid were allowed to pass freely. The protesters are against the wartime agreement between the EU and Ukraine, which gives Ukrainian truckers extended access to the European market. The previous protest in November 2023 amounted to a blockade at the Polish-Ukrainian border and targeted all agricultural goods exported from Ukraine. Local authorities banned the protest, but a court in the southeastern city of Lublin revoked the decision on Monday.
And U.S. President Donald Trump has arrived in Saudi Arabia for the first day of his tour of the Middle East. Now, this marks Trump's first foreign visit in his second term in office.
Trump's objectives in the region include securing economic deals and making progress on issues in the region, including the Gaza ceasefire and Saudi-Israel relations. With his trip to Saudi Arabia, Trump aims to convince the country to join the Abraham Accords. Trump's special envoy for the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, said talks on the matter were proceeding, but after Israel began its ground operation in Gaza, the negotiations were paused. Saudi officials have said they won't move forward with the discussions unless there is a real progress in finding a two-state solution for Palestine. After visiting Saudi Arabia, Donald Trump will travel to Qatar and then the United Arab Emirates on a tour set to end on May 16th.
Spanish authorities started to probe cyber weaknesses at small power plants after a massive blackout shook the Iberian Peninsula. According to officials in Madrid, investigators are seeking to determine whether such facilities were a weak link exploited to bring the Spanish power grid to a halt last month.
Spain has yet to identify the root cause of the collapse of the power grid, which took place on April 28th. It has not, however, discounted a cyber attack, with the country's energy and environment minister saying that every possibility remains on the table. Additionally, a judge on Spain's National High Court has opened an investigation into whether a cyber attack was behind the blackout. At the same time, senior Madrid officials have said they have concerns about the robustness of cyber defense at small and medium-sized power-generating facilities. The Spanish grid operator, however, said on a day of the blackout that there was no evidence of a cyber attack targeting its facilities.
And that completes this edition of World News here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching and stay with us for more news and features.